Hello, thank you for watching my channel today. My name is Sarah and my channel is called Your True Shelf. Firstly, I'd just like to say Happy New Year to everybody because today is the 1st of January, and I just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody who's been watching my channel, who has subscribed, liked, commented, anything like that across the course of the year, because it means the world to me, and this is like my favourite hobby. I love doing booktube, and I just want to say thank you to everybody who continues to make it happen, and I'm so grateful for all of the friendships that I've made. I've met 5 booktubers this year, which is really nice. So I've met Heather from Soggy Expat Book Nerd, I've met Sean and Bert from Pastory Time, I've met Mercedes from Mercy's Bookish Musings, and I've met Joe Smith, who is not a YouTuber, but he comments, and that's how we met, and we're now firm friends. So it's been a really good year for booktube, so thank you so much. And today I'm just going to film a video which is like my last haul and my last wrap up of the year, so that I can then record my favourite books of the year. So I did my bullet journal spread yesterday, so I know what my favourite books are. I've managed to rank them. I'm really looking forward to doing that with my stats, which will be my next video after this. So without further ado, so in terms of a haul, I haven't done a haul for a while because my book buying has slowed down definitely. So this year I did buy 53 books, but it has slowed down considerably. So I think at the beginning of the year, especially when there was the half price hardback sale at the beginning of last year, I did buy quite a few books, and then I really sort of took stock of my book buying and thought, actually I'm just going to buy books that I really want to read, which sounds kind of obvious, but you know what it's like when you're in a bookshop, it's easy to go a bit wild. So just to compare, so in 2021 I bought 108 books, and this year 53, so less than half as many, and I've read 20 of the 53 so far. So the final ones that I have to show you, the first one may not quite stick to the rules that I'm just peeling a sticker off it, that I just said, because it was free. One of our book club members just had a stack of books, and I thought this one looked quite good. This is The Keeper of Lost Things by Ruth Hogan. I'm not sure if I'm like desperate to read it, but it does sound really cozy and really good. It's about an elderly gentleman by the name of Anthony Perdue, who for like half his life he spent collecting objects which are lost things. When he dies, he leaves his house to his assistant Laura, and he leaves her all of the contents within, and he asks her to try and reunite the lost things with their owners. And I think that brings about quite a few sort of stories in the way that things are reunited. So it sounds like a nice book. It was a Richard and Judy book club choice, and I really like the cover, which is probably what sucked me in. On Kindle, I then bought The Tea Girl of Hummingbird Lane by Lisa C, which was a recommendation from Karen Evans at Roving Reader. So Karen just said like I would really like this book, and when I read the synopsis I thought, oh my god, yes, I would really like this book. So it's about a young girl who is brought up in rural China, and she is a tea farmer with her family, and they're in a very traditional sort of old-fashioned community. And one day a vehicle turns up to the tea farm, and it's the first time that any of them have seen a vehicle before, and a newcomer arrives, or newcomers perhaps. I don't know how much of a spoiler this is just what I read on the blurb, so I don't know if this happens early on or not, but if it doesn't, it's a bit annoying. But so she gets pregnant and she gives her baby away, and then we also follow her daughter as she's raised in California, presumably by a white couple, and is trying to find out about her background and her cultural heritage and things from China. So that sounds amazing. I'm really looking forward to reading that one, and reading the synopsis again just now has really sparked my interest to read that one soon. The next one is a first for me. I got my first ever manga. Just because I just wanted to try them. Loads of people on BookTube love manga, and I just thought I'd try it. So this is the one that I chose. This is called Oh I Love Mix Up by Aruko and Wataru Hinekure. And this is basically about so one of these boys fancies this girl and he asks if he can borrow her rubber, and then when he borrows it he sees another boy's name on the side of it, so he thinks that she fancies that boy. But then when she sees him using the rubber, she thinks that he fancies the boy with the name on it or something like that, and it's all a bit of a mix-up. So this is obviously the first in a series because it's manga, but I just thought that artwork looked really cute. I fancied one of the kind of cute mangas, so yeah, we'll give it a go, see what I think. The same day, with my birthday money, I bought Heaven by Mieko Kawakami, and I love the cover of this book, but also I have heard other people talk about it and it stood out to me as one that I would like to read. So this is set in a school. We're following a 14-year-old boy who has a lazy eye and is bullied because of his appearance. And he forms a friend with a young girl of the same age called Kojima, who is also bullied, and they form this friendship, but the back says, you know, can you really form a true friendship when the basis of the friendship is shared terror? I've heard this is quite a difficult read. This was listed for the Man Booker International Prize, but I am interested definitely to read this one soon. I then have a book that my friend Nicola read, and she said to me, I have to read it. It's absolutely amazing. And that is The Four Winds by Kristin Hannah. So I've got, I think it's The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah, but I haven't read it as yet. I know she's an author who's always spoken of really highly. And The Four Winds is about, I think it's set in the I can't remember if it's the 30s or the 70s, but I think it's set in like the west coast of America, and there's a woman with her children, her husband, and drought hits, and I think the husband ups and leaves and does a runner, and then she has to decide, is she going to stay and fight for their land with her children, or is she going to take the children and go somewhere new? And if she does, like, what will that be like? So that is the premise, and I trust my friend's recommendation because she said it's amazing. And then I have two books which I bought with Joe. So Joe, who I mentioned earlier, we actually managed to meet up in Essex because it was sort of between where we both were, and we went book shopping together. Probably the best book shopping experience I've ever had, because I went with someone who's just as passionate about books as me. It was absolutely fantastic. And we both bought one of the same books, which we're going to read together. So we both bought this one, which is Mr. Ma and Son by Lao She. So we both read this and the blurb of this and thought yes straight away, and we decided we'd buddy read it together this coming year. So this is about a Mr. Ma who is from China and his son Ma Wei, and they run an antique shop near St Paul's Cathedral in London. This is set in the 1920s, and it's basically about their immigrant experience, about how they find several characters that they meet quite baffling, and just trying to sort of navigate England, a satire about the people who they meet in England and their experience coming here from China. So this was written, so this is a modern classic, so let's just see when this was written. So this was written in 1929, so it's written sort of contemporaneously to when it's set. Then I also bought a book that I'm planning on buddy reading with Jo. She's already read this book, but we're planning on buddy reading it this year. This is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. This will be my first Elizabeth Gaskell. I know, again, among the classics readers on BookTube that everyone loves Elizabeth Gaskell, but this will be my first of hers. So this is about a woman by the name of Margaret Hale, and her father leaves the church when he's having a crisis of faith, and they move to the north of England. And initially she's quite kind of disgusted by the north of England compared to the south, but then she starts becoming interested in the mill working and the conditions, and she starts to become an activist to try and help the mill workers. And I think she really likes sort of butts heads with the mill owner, but I think she also kind of is falling for him at the same time. So this sounds really good. I'm really looking forward to reading this. I think we're reading it in April. We've got a spreadsheet with all of our plans for buddy reads this year, but I'm pretty sure it's April that we're reading this one in. The next book is one that I've had on my list for a really long time to read, and I found a large print edition on sale. So this is Growing Up Disabled in Australia, and this is collated by Findlay. So this is basically an anthology of essays by different people with disabilities and chronic illness in Australia, and stories that they want to tell us about their lived experiences. So this is large print, so it's very thick, but I don't mind at all reading a large print book. It's sometimes quite nice to read. I really don't like reading really tiny print, so this will be absolutely fine. I'm really looking forward to reading this because I've heard so many positive things about it. And then the final purchase was one that I bought on my Kindle yesterday, and I don't tend to buy loads on Kindle because I prefer to read paper books, and also I don't want them to just sit there. I can't remember even how I found this book. I think I might have just been looking through the sale books and the cover drew me in. But it sounds really, really good, and I wanted to buy it straight away. So this is called Take My Hand by Dolen Perkins-Valdez, and this is based on a true event, and it's about a woman who goes to work in a birth control clinic, and she's hoping that she'll be able to empower women for their bodies and their choices in the 1970s in America. And her first patients are aged 11 and 13. I think they're black girls from a really poor community, and she takes these girls like into her life and into her heart. And then I think something happens which changes the whole situation, and then we go to when she is retiring, and she then has to sort of face things that happened in the past or something along those lines. So I just thought it sounded brilliant, and I loved the cover. The cover drew me in the first place as well. So that's all the books that I haven't told you about that I've bought this year. And then I'm just going to tell you about the last few books that I read for the end of the year. The first one was a TBR Vet for me. I was just browsing my shelves for something to read, and I thought, do you know what, I'm just going to read this book. I bought it after I watched the film many years ago, and this is Salmon Fishing in the Yemen by Torday. This book is okay. I liked the film quite a lot more. As you can see, it's got Emily Blunt and Ewan McGregor as the title characters in the film. So basically we're following, just remembering their names. So there's Dr. Alfred Jones, who works for the Ministry of Fishing or something like that. And then he is approached by a company who Harriet is working for, and her client is a sheikh in the Middle East, and he wants to bring salmon fishing to the Yemen. And so Harriet is trying to make this happen. Dr. Jones is saying this is ridiculous, like salmon are cold water fish, like how are you possibly going to put cold water fish into a really hot country? This is not going to work. And the sheikh's like, it has to work. And yeah, it's basically, there's a lot of letters and things in there. The film is really good. The book, 3 stars tops, I would say. The second book that I read was part of the Dickens readathon, and it was Oliver Twist, which is the second book that I read, and we're reading the books in publication order, hosted by Katie at Books and Things. So Oliver Twist is a book that I wasn't familiar really with the plot. I've probably seen bits and pieces of films and stuff, but I wasn't really sure what was going to happen in Oliver Twist, and I absolutely loved it. So obviously we're following Oliver Twist, who is born in the workhouse. His mum dies giving birth to him, and he's raised in a sort of a children's home in terrible conditions, and then he is basically put out to work, and just lots of different sort of things which aren't his fault before him, and he keeps getting moved from place to place, and you keep thinking, oh, he's finally got somewhere now, and then another tragedy will happen, and he ends up falling in with the wrong crowd, and he is trying really desperately to make a good life for himself. He's a good kid, and I really liked Oliver. the characters were like really, really fleshed out in this. The characters of especially like Bill Sykes, Nancy, Fagin, they are really fleshed out characters, and I thought that the writing particularly of the villains was wonderful. One thing I will point out, which is obviously a real negative, is that there's a lot of anti-Semitism against Fagin in this book, and I believe that Dickens was subsequently challenged by the Jewish community, and he did take this on board for later novels, I believe. But whilst it's of its time, it still makes for very uncomfortable reading, and obviously I didn't support any of the anti-Semitism in this book, whilst I did really enjoy the story. So it's a real adventure. It will pull at your heartstrings. Like, the way that the children are treated is shocking. The living conditions are shocking, and you can see Dickens' sort of activist roots in this, and his experience of living in poverty himself growing up. So I loved this book, and I gave it 4.5 stars. It was very, very good. The third book that I read in December was The 12 Days of Dashin Lily by David Levithan and Rachel Cohn. I listened to the first Dashin Lily after I watched the Netflix series last year, and I decided I was going to make it a tradition to listen to one every Christmas, because they're always set at Christmas time. So this is the second in the Dashin Lily series. I think there's 3 altogether, and this is basically following on from the events of the first book. So I can't really tell you anything about them. Dash and Lily are a couple. Lily is going through some difficult home circumstances, and it's about how their relationship navigates those difficult circumstances, which make Christmas a trickier time for them, and particularly for Lily. So I really enjoyed it. It was what I needed after listening to Dickens. I really needed something that was going to be light and jolly, and that's why I picked it, and I gave it 3.75 stars. Following on from this was an audiobook that I had for absolutely ages, and it was called Keep the Aspidistra Flying by George Orwell. This was narrated by Richard E. Grant. He really brought it to life. And so we're following a character called Gordon, and Gordon is basically, he's been sent to a really prestigious school, and he has every opportunity to do well in life, but he's quite negative, and he has decided that he does not want to spend his life worshipping money. So he does not want to get a good job. He just wants to get any old job so he can have enough money to survive, but not be wealthy and not be obsessed with money. But then he spends the whole of his life, or the whole of this large section of time, feeling so sorry for himself because he has no money, and how he can't socialise with certain people, he gets looked down on, all of these things that he can't do in life because he has no money. And yet he has no money because he chose to have no money because he didn't want a good job. So it's this kind of satire on I guess like the class system and money in Britain in the 1930s. This is set just before the start of the Second World War. And so yeah, it's Gordon's kind of journey through his feelings. He has this really wealthy friend. He keeps trying to bail him out, and he keeps saying, no, you can't possibly bail me out because I'll never be able to pay you back. His friend doesn't really care. His friend's really posh and really wealthy, and Gordon constantly feels inferior to him because he doesn't have money. And he's in a relationship with this woman called Rosemary, who, I don't know why she's in a relationship with him, because he treats her quite badly, but she kind of persists in trying to make him the man that he could be. I enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was very cleverly written, very funny, but also kind of talking about some serious ideals as well. And it was not the most like cheerful book in the world, but it is a funny book, and I did really enjoy it. Very different from Animal Farm. I then read this book. So this is the Amber Spyglass by Philip Pullman, the last in the Northern Lights trilogy, and I am very, very late to the party with reading this trilogy, but I've now completed it. So Heather and I buddy read the whole trilogy one book at a time, and I sort of pushed us to do this book now because I wanted to watch the TV series and I didn't want to know what happens before I read the book. So Heather and I did the buddy read, and I think it was a great book to buddy read because this book is a lot more layered than the first two, and obviously I'm not going to talk about the actual plot because it would spoil it for anyone who hasn't read the first two books. But this is there's so much about sort of the church, the power of the church, religion, sin, angels. There's just so many themes that Heather and I discussed, and sometimes neither of us had any answers, but we just had fun discussing it. And there were quite a lot of late night chats on WhatsApp and I think this was fantastic. This was both of our favourite books of the series, and we want to go and read the Book of Dust trilogy next. Obviously the third one's not out yet, but I think hopefully early-ish this year we're going to read the Book of Dust, and then the one following on from that. So yeah, this was a real success and I very much enjoyed it, and I am into the TV series. Next was a really little book, which was The Book of Spells The Lost Spells even, by Robert Macfarlane and Jackie Morris. And this is a book of poetry with the most incredible, beautiful illustrations. And this was a Mother's Day present from the children a couple of years ago, and the pictures are just glorious in here. Absolutely stunning. So I just spent a really long time just studying all the artwork because it's just so gorgeous. So this was a really lovely book that you could read with kids, on your own, as an adult, reread, dip in and out, whatever you fancy, but it's beautiful. The next book might seem like a bit of a strange choice for me because I am a vegan and an ethical vegan, and the next book is called Memoirs of a Fox Hunting Man by Siegfried Sassoon. The reason that I had been wanting to read this was because I heard Ruby Granger talk about it, and I love her YouTube channel. And so when I was with Jo in Waterstone, she spotted it because we'd been talking about wartime poetry, and I was like, oh, I actually want to read that book, and I hadn't seen it anywhere before, so I picked it up. And so there is a lot of fox hunting in this book. Now I would say that because Ruby's vegan as well, so I did assume that it would be kind of okay to read, it wouldn't be too traumatic, and it isn't. There's no gory details of fox hunting at all in this book. In fact, on the first hunt that he goes on, somebody spots a fox really early and he says don't tell anyone because they'll end up catching him. So he's really not actually bloodthirsty in this at all. What this is about, because I would say the first 3/4 of the book is about fox hunting really, but it's not about the actual act of killing foxes, thankfully. It's about his experience with getting to know different areas, different hunt areas, the people in the hunt, how they sort of the hierarchies work in the hunt, and how actually difficult it is to join one, how he had to learn all the horse riding skills that he needs, how he had to buy his horses. So there's loads about horses and land and countryside and things like that, and I liked him as a person. So this is a fictionalized memoir basically of Siegfried Sassoon's life, and this is the first one. And the bit that I was really interested in was the wartime stuff, because I'm really interested in wartime memoirs, and he doesn't go to the front until probably three quarters of the way in, and once he gets to the front, I found this book a lot more interesting and a lot more what I was looking for. So the next in the series is Memoirs of an Infantry Officer, so I think that I would find the next one better than this. So I gave it 3.5 stars. Like I said, it wasn't brutal, thank God, but obviously I don't approve of fox hunting, but we had to kind of just accept that's what he did, that was his lifestyle, and I did learn about it. I still don't approve of it, but I did learn about it, and I was really interested to hear about his wartime experiences. The last book that I listened to on Audible before the end of the year was This Girl Round by Helen Croydon, which is a non-fiction book about about running and triathlons. And the reason that I wanted to read this, I bought it ages ago, but the reason I wanted to read it was because I had really gone off schedule with my running. I was in lockdown for like at least a year. I was running 3 times a week religiously, like I was not going to move my runs for anything. And now I then sort of, it's got really sporadic, and it didn't help that I broke my toe, as I said in a recent video. And so I just want to get onto a good schedule again, and this was what I was looking for motivation with this book. I really like books about running. I really enjoyed this book, but there were definitely some problematic areas for me. So Helen Croydon is a journalist. She is very privileged. She lives a very privileged lifestyle, and that isn't really acknowledged throughout the book. And she makes no mention really of work for the whole book. She seems to have a lot of money, and money doesn't limit her, or she doesn't mention money at all. So when she's buying lots of things and travelling and all that kind of thing, there's no mention ever of that it's difficult to afford, or not everybody could do this and stuff like that. She's also talks about her lifestyle before exercising. So basically she goes socialising all the time. She's unhappy in a relationship. It's all about sort of VIP parties and stuff like that. And she's dressed very smartly all the time. She's really concerned about her appearance and her body appearance as well. And she just realises that she's not really happy with this lifestyle. And so she decides to take up running. And so that's all well and good. I mean, I'm not that kind of person at all, so I didn't really relate to her as a person. But the thing that I found really tricky, right? So she mentions she goes to the gym. That's fine. Obviously, that's good. But when I started running, as a person who'd never ran before, I did Catch to 5K. It took me like the whole Catch to 5K program to build up to 5 kilometres. I'm not the fastest runner by any means. And she joins a running club straight away off the bat, which I admire her confidence, because I don't still have the confidence to do that, and I've been running for 3 years. And she goes for her first run is 10 miles, and she does a pace of something like 8 miles and 8-minute miles or something like that, 7.5-minute miles. That's really fast. And she's running 10 miles and she's never ran before. And I was like, how is this happening? Because I didn't understand that. She must have been a lot fitter than she said she was. But she has so much grit and determination. She pushes herself so hard in this book. She really gets into her sport. She gets into open water swimming and cycling and triathlons. She doesn't have a clue when she turns up. There's loads of things which are quite funny, because she turns up and doesn't know how to do lots of things, and doesn't know how to put cleats on her shoes when she turns up for her first cycle race. And there's loads of really funny things, and things that are quite relatable as somebody who is new to that community. I think the thing that made me like this book is because her grit and determination was so high. She is so tough, and I think that really kind of inspired me, even if I couldn't relate to everything. But like I say, there are some downsides of the book, but I enjoyed it, and I gave it, how much did I give it? 4 stars in the end. And then the final bit, because this is a really long video, the final book that I read last year, is Snowflake by Louise Nealon, which is a library book. And I picked this up because I heard Kira from Kira Foster talk about this book, and she compared it to Sally Rooney. So it is kind of similar to Sally Rooney. So this is, Louise is an Irish author, and this book is set in Dublin, and we're following Debbie, who is 18, 19, and she is living on a dairy farm. Her mum doesn't work, and she spends all day researching and writing about her dreams, and she believes that other people's dreams get inserted into her brain. And then Debbie helps on the farm, and her uncle lives in a caravan at the bottom of the garden. Yeah, Billy is his name, and he drinks quite a lot. And they've got this kind of dysfunctional but working family. Debbie's really close to Billy, and there's also a farmhand who is in a relationship with Maeve, who is Debbie's mum, and it's sort of in her community. She's settled in her community. She's clever, and she gets into Trinity College in Dublin, and when she gets there, she just feels like a real outsider. She doesn't really know how to make friends, or she's struggling with the work because it's really different from schoolwork, and she's commuting to the farm every day, so she's not really sort of fully immersed in student life. And it's just about their journey together, really. Her journey, she meets a friend who she gets quite close with called Xanthe, and it's about their relationship and about the family relationships on the farm, her mum's mental health, and I thought it was really good. It was quite Sally Rooney-esque because it's about sort of that age group of people and set in Ireland, and there are similar vibes, but I thought it was really enjoyable. I really liked it, and that was a 4-star as well. Gosh, that was a lot of talking. A lot of talking. So I hope that you're still with me, and again, thank you for everything in 2022. I hope that everyone has a wonderful year in 2023. If you want to share with me if you've read any of those books, then please do so, or what you're reading. That's any kind of bookish content comments are really welcome. And I will be back soon with my best books of 2022 video, and lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.